It was early spring in 1998, a season of hope and new beginnings for a young woman who had just stepped into adulthood. At 23 years old, Amy Lynn Bradley was full of life, ambition, and plans for the future. A recent college graduate originally from Petersburg, Virginia, she had secured a job and was preparing to move into her own apartment. Milestones that should have marked the start of a bright new chapter. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Amy reached out personally to someone she cared about deeply. In January of that year, she wrote a heartfelt letter to her girlfriend, Molly McClure, expressing remorse, vulnerability, and an emotional plea for forgiveness. The phrase, "I feel like there is an ocean between us," now sits in stark contrast to the literal ocean that would define the mystery of her disappearance just weeks later. By March 21, 1998, Amy's family, her father, Ron Bradley, her mother, Eva Bradley, and her younger brother Brad, had gathered in San Juan, Puerto Rico, ready to embark on what was meant to be a joyful Caribbean vacation aboard Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Seas. The ship, a massive floating resort, set sail on a springtime voyage that seemed ordinary in every way: sun, sea, and the promise of adventure. Over the next 2 days, the Bradleys visited idyllic ports of call, laughing, dining, and enjoying each other's company, like thousands of other vacationers. But beneath the surface of that carefree itinerary, something would unfold that no family should ever have to endure. In the early hours of March 24th, as the ship was making its way toward Curaçao, Amy spent the night celebrating with her brother at the ship's nightclub. Around dawn, she returned to the family cabin along with Brad. Her father, Ron, would later recall the last confirmed sighting of his daughter. She was asleep on the private balcony of their stateroom, peaceful and unaware that this simple cabin feature would become the last place she was ever seen by her loved ones. But within a matter of minutes, Amy was gone. When Ron checked again just a short time later, Amy Bradley wasn't there, vanished without any indication of struggle or farewell. Her cigarettes and lighter were nowhere to be found, and she left behind the familiar comfort of her family's presence as if she had never been there at all. In that single moment, a moment as fleeting as a breeze over the ocean, a joyful vacation became a nightmare. The tranquil water of the Caribbean Sea turned into an enduring mystery. Every unanswered question, every theory, and whispered possibility since then can be traced back to that one vanishing. Amy Lynn Bradley, gone without a trace. Long before the mystery, there was a family. Ordinary in many ways, tightly knit in others, and brimming with hopes for a memorable spring break together. To them, this trip wasn't just a vacation. It was a celebration of life's milestones and of being together. Amy Lynn Bradley was born on May 12, 1974, in Petersburg, Virginia, to Ron Bradley and Eva Bradley, parents who raised her and her younger brother Brad in nearby Chesterfield County. Ron worked as an insurance executive, and it was through his career that this trip became possible. In early 1998, he qualified for a Royal Caribbean cruise to the Caribbean Sea after selling a significant amount of life insurance premiums, a coveted incentive in his company. To make the holiday complete, Ron and Iva paid extra so both of their children could join them. This wasn't just another family holiday. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Amy, having recently graduated from Longwood University with a degree in sports psychology and poised to start a new job in computer consulting, was eager to relax, celebrate her achievements, and spend cherished time with her loved ones before her life changed in significant ways. In the months leading up to the cruise, Amy's home life was full of transition and anticipation. She had just moved into a new apartment, taken on the responsibilities of adulthood, and even adopted a bulldog companion she adored. Little elements that made the idea of a family trip feel especially sweet. On March 21, 1998, the Bradleys arrived in San Juan, Puerto Rico, where the Rhapsody of the Seas awaited them. The ship, grand, gleaming, and promising endless sunshine, became their home for what was to be a 7-day tropical adventure. For the first days of the voyage, the family reveled in typical cruise life, exploring port cities, enjoying buffets and themed parties, marveling at postcard-like ocean views, and making memories they hoped would last a lifetime. For a family that shared weekly traditions back home, this was a rare moment of uninterrupted togetherness. Amy and Brad, close in age and affection, were especially looking forward to spending quality time together. He was a student on break from George Mason University, and she was excited to share stories of her plans for the future: graduate school, career aspirations, and a life she imagined beyond Virginia. Even so, the family was joyful as the Rhapsody of the Seas set sail. Their route took them first to Aruba, a vibrant island of white sand and warmly welcoming locals, where they shared laughter and experiences that would become cherished memories. The night of March 23, 1998, began like any other on a cruise ship where music, laughter, and sea air weaved together under neon lights and laughter. But for Amy Lynn Bradley and her younger brother Brad, the hours that followed would be the last time this family saw her alive. That evening, Amy and Brad joined a Mardi Gras-themed dance party in the nightclub on the Rhapsody of the Seas, an expansive venue filled with strobe lights and a live band called Blue Orchid. They weren't quiet observers. They were in the mix with other passengers, dancing energetically to the music and absorbing everything around them. Photos and video later released publicly show Amy smiling and moving to the rhythm, carefree and animated. A young woman fully present in a moment of celebration. Among the musicians was Alistair Yellow Douglas, a member of Blue Orchid. He and Amy danced together that night, and multiple accounts confirm their interaction on the dance floor. According to Douglas, he left the party at roughly 1 a.m., around the time he said he and Amy parted ways. Though he later stated those details to media and investigators. As the pulse of music faded and the early morning hours drew on, Brad eventually decided he had danced long enough. At approximately 3:35 a.m., the ship's computerized door lock system recorded his return to the family's cabin. 5 minutes later, Amy followed, her keycard captured by the same system. Inside their stateroom, the siblings didn't part ways immediately. Instead, they stepped out onto the private balcony that opened off their room. In the dark quiet of the Caribbean night, they talked. Brothers comforting sisters, sharing stories, and unwinding after a high-energy evening. Some reports suggest the conversation lingered until the verge of dawn. Brad has since recounted that he was the last person to speak to Amy before going to sleep, and that as he headed inside saying, "I love you," she chose to remain outside for a little longer. He remembered her expressing her intention to enjoy the fresh sea air, a simple, almost tender decision in a night that would soon become filled with mystery. All around them, the ship continued its silent glide toward Curaçao. Between approximately 5:15 a.m. and 5:30 a.m., Amy was last seen alive by her father, Ron Bradley. Awakening early, he glanced toward the balcony and saw his daughter reclining in a lounge chair, peaceful and seemingly asleep. When Ron checked again around 6 a.m., Amy was gone. Her father looked out and saw the balcony door ajar, partially open, where moments before it had been closed and where Amy had last been resting. More perplexing still, some of her personal belongings were left behind in ways that defy simple explanation. Her sandals were found neatly positioned inside the cabin, and items such as her clothing and identification remained undisturbed. Yet her cigarettes, lighter, and room key were missing. Small objects that suggested movement but no clear direction. This absence was especially confounding because Amy's other shoes, 9 pairs she had purchased on the cruise, were left untouched. Nothing about the state of the cabin or balcony suggested a struggle. There were no overturned chairs, no visible signs of force, no indication that someone had pulled her away. Everything looked as though she had simply stepped out and vanished. Around the same time Amy disappeared from the balcony, 2 other passengers later claimed they saw a woman matching her description inside an elevator heading to the top deck, carrying her room key, cigarettes, and lighter, the very items missing from the balcony area. By the time Rhapsody of the Seas prepared to dock at Curaçao that morning, Amy Bradley was nowhere to be found. Her family only realized she was missing between 6 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. The Bradley family reported her missing to the ship's crew, begging for an immediate, thorough search. But the yacht-like routine of cruise schedules and port arrivals offered no pause. Despite her disappearance happening as passengers prepared to disembark, no formal alert referencing Amy was broadcast ship-wide at that time, leaving precious early search hours largely squandered. What should have been a simple, routine check became a cavernous void of uncertainty. A disappearance without a splash, a cry, or even a trace of how a 23-year-old woman stepped from one moment into mystery. That morning marked the end of what was supposed to be a holiday, otherwise filled with laughter, music, and promise, and the beginning of an unsolved ordeal that more than 2 decades later still defies explanation. When the realization hit that Amy Lynn Bradley was gone, the Bradleys were catapulted from confusion into frantic action. What should have been a routine morning of sunshine and exploration morphed into a parent's worst nightmare. And as the massive Rhapsody of the Seas docked that March morning in Curaçao, every second suddenly carried immense weight. At approximately 6:30 a.m., Ron and Eva Bradley, joined by their son Brad, reported Amy missing to the ship's purser, the cruise line's onboard administrative office. They urgently pleaded with crew members to halt passenger disembarkation so a ship-wide search could begin. The Bradleys feared every minute that passed increased the chance she could be lost at sea, or worse. But the cruise staff informed them that it was too early and operationally complicated to make a ship-wide announcement or delay disembarkation. Only at 7:50 a.m., by which time most passengers had already left the vessel, did the ship finally broadcast a missing person announcement asking anyone with information to report to the purser's desk. The delay, critical time lost, would later be heavily scrutinized. Royal Caribbean crew members began searching public areas and cabins later that morning, working frantically to locate Amy. Despite combing corridors, lounges, crew areas, and stairwells, there was no sign of her anywhere on board. While the ship remained docked, local Curaçao authorities and the Netherlands Antilles Coast Guard were notified, and they launched a comprehensive 4-day search of surrounding waters. Helicopters circled above, boats crisscrossed the Porto sea lanes, and radar planes scanned the ocean for anomalies or debris. But there was no physical evidence to suggest she had fallen overboard or entered the water at all. By the next day, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, had taken over primary investigative responsibilities. The case was quickly classified as a potential kidnapping due to the lack of evidence supporting an accidental fall. The FBI also issued a reward of up to $25,000 for information leading to Amy's recovery or the conviction of anyone responsible for her disappearance. Agents aboard and ashore began the painstaking work of interviewing crew members, passengers, and anyone who had interacted with Amy. They reviewed ship logs and attempted to secure security camera footage, though it was limited and did not clearly show her leaving the vessel at any documented point. The Bradleys, meanwhile, pushed for even deeper investigation. They insisted the ship had not been searched thoroughly in those early hours and urged authorities to conduct what they called an immediate and total sweep, including hidden compartments, maintenance areas, and lower decks. According to later family accounts, FBI agents did conduct exhaustive searches of the ship, and the Netherlands Antilles Coast Guard employed multiple aircraft and sea vessels, but still found nothing. Despite hopes the surrounding waters might yield some trace, a life jacket, clothing, or even a personal item, nothing was recovered. Not a single piece of evidence emerged to indicate whether Amy entered the water at all, was taken ashore, or encountered someone who could have harmed her. Investigators also began to collect witness reports from passengers and crew. Some provided recurring claims of seeing individuals in the vicinity of Amy's last known locations, while others described unverified sightings near Curaçao after the ship's arrival. But none were ever corroborated with physical evidence. The early investigative phase brought no definitive answers, and the silence of those first crucial hours became one of the most haunting and contested elements of the case. Questions lingered over the initial delay in public alerts, the thoroughness of the ship's search, and whether vital minutes were lost when immediate containment and identification protocols should have been activated. And though Amy's family and authorities searched every inch they could, there was no trace of her, no explanation, no closure. The search had begun, but it would ultimately only deepen the mystery. In the years following March 1998, numerous individuals came forward, claiming to have seen someone they believed to be Amy, often in troubling circumstances, though none of these reports were ever confirmed by law enforcement. Taxi driver in Curaçao in 1998. Shortly after Amy disappeared, a local taxi driver in Curaçao claimed to have seen a barefoot young woman matching her description in the port parking lot, desperately searching for a phone. He claimed that he even saw her again elsewhere on the island. Authorities never verified this account. Canadian divers at Playa Porto Marie also in 1998. Two Canadian tourists reported seeing a woman on a Curaçao beach with distinctive tattoos they believed matched Amy's, accompanied by two men. The witness said he tried to interact with her, but she was quickly led away. The FBI investigated but found no corroborative evidence. U.S. Navy petty officer in a brothel in 1999. In January 1999, a U.S. Navy sailor, William Bill Hefner, claimed he encountered a frightened young woman in a Curaçao brothel who identified herself as Amy Bradley and begged for help, saying she was being kept against her will. He reportedly did not report the sighting immediately due to fear of professional consequences. The establishment later burned down, hampering verification. San Francisco sightings in 2003. Witnesses in San Francisco claimed they saw a woman resembling Amy with two men in April 2003. They reported she appeared to look pleadingly before being escorted away. Sketches were released, but no definitive identification was made. Barbados hotel sighting by 2005. A Canadian woman vacationing in Barbados claimed she saw a distressed woman accompanied by three men in a hotel restroom. The woman allegedly identified herself as Amy before being hurried away. The witness later saw Amy's photo on TV and became convinced it was her. Anonymous adult website photo, also in 2005. In 2005, the Bradley family received an anonymous tip with photos of a woman known online as Joss on an adult site. Some experts noted physical similarities, even tattoos, though the FBI could not officially verify the identity. Each alleged sighting brought waves of hope and heartbreak, but none produced verifiable physical proof, such as DNA or authenticated images. Investigators and family members treated these leads with intense scrutiny, yet they remain unconfirmed and unresolved. Nearly 3 decades have passed since March 24, 1998, and the questions remain. Did Amy fall overboard in a tragic accident? Was she abducted during a brief moment when the ship was docked? Could she have been taken off the ship and trafficked, as some theories suggest? Or did she simply vanish into thin air, lost to time? In 2025, a Netflix docuseries titled Amy Bradley is Missing brought renewed attention to her story, weaving archival material, interviews, and new contextual details into a narrative that reignited debate and public fascination with her disappearance. Amy's disappearance was officially declared a legal death in 2010, yet her family, friends, and advocates still hope for answers, still cling to a possibility that one day the truth will surface.